We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including big news out of Montreal. New reports emerging suggest that Dach still very much rehabbing and might not be ready for the start of the season. Could this force the Canadiens to reevaluate their options for the number 2 center spot? And maybe we will see a more likely trade for that role before the season starts. We'll discuss the possibilities and what the reports indicate. Plus, we know the new cover athlete for the EA Sports game for NHL 26. We have a big signing in Long Island for first overall pick Matthew Schaefer. We got news from the Toronto Maple Leafs on some signings. Jimmy Vesey has a new home as well, and it's not in the NHL. Plus, we have news out of Anaheim and Seattle to discuss as well coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. Let's kick things off with the news that just broke moments ago before I hit the record button here. And that's the New York Islanders have signed first overall pick Matthew Schaefer to his 3-year ELC. That's significant news for the Islanders. There was a lot of speculation and wondering what he was going to be doing for the coming season. Now, of course, I don't think the Islanders are wanting to pressure him or, get him playing something he's not ready or comfortable for. They don't want to rush him. They want to make sure that they do what's best for his development. But obviously, after a lot of consultations, they've decided, it's best for him to likely start in the NHL. I suspect at the very least, because he signed his contract now, that he's going to at least get the 9-game sample. He might stick around longer than that. But it was quite a story. Of course, Matthew Schaefer is quite a kid. I mean, not only is incredibly talented hockey player, but he's mature beyond his years, has dealt with a lot of adversity early in his life. Of course, losing his mother and his billet mother very close together. He's had to do a lot of growing up and gone through things that most of us never want to go through in our entire lives, let alone as a teenager. Just an incredible person. And it's just such a humble, kid that's extremely talented as well. But of course, the Islanders did a great job getting this contract together. Of course, he gets the max on everything, being a first overall pick, no surprise. He's going to get the max A and B bonuses. So the A bonuses can be total of $1 million. The B bonuses can add up to $2 million. His signing bonus per year is $97.5, and of course his salary $877.5. So his cap hit would be $975,000, which is the new minimum for rookies. And ultimately, this is not really shocking at all that he gets the best of everything, but it does eliminate some options and creates a better, more certain path of where things are going to go. So with this contract, he can either, I suspect, like I said, get at least a 9-game sample in the NHL. If they think it's best for him, he could go back to junior. He could go back and play with the Erie Otters, probably dominate junior. And, would that be best for him? It may not be. Even if he doesn't play junior hockey with his junior team, he very well could still be released as well to go represent his country, Team Canada, at the World Juniors over the Christmas break. Of course, the Islanders are going to have a bunch of days off. Obviously, he would miss some games, obviously, but it's not unusual to see players get released to go participate in a tournament like that. They're going to have to determine what's best for his development. Now, of course, because of his age, he can't go straight to the AHL, but he can either stay in the NHL all season, he can go to to his junior team, he can get a 9-game sample size, then go back to junior later. It's hard to say what can happen, but what the one thing and this does eliminate is the fact that he won't be playing college hockey. If you have a pro contract, you're not eligible to play in the NCAA. You can't play college hockey, so that option is out of the question for Schaefer. So we'll see what happens, but in case I recommend you check out the Islanders social media as well. He was meeting with a group of 20 kids who, like him, had already at a young age lost one of their parents, and was talking to them, giving them a lot of advice, and kind of trying to build them back up and help them deal with this. And then they had one of the kids at the end of that meeting present him with his ELC to sign. So it was quite just a touching moment. Very well done by the New York Islanders. But there's not only the social media team, but the management staff there. Just all in all, great thing. I believe he was throwing out the first pitch at the Mets game today as well. I believe we also now know he's going to wear number 48. So now that he's officially signed, has a number, I suspect his jerseys will be flying off the shelf here in record time, at least in that market for sure. what a kid. Great signing by the New York Islanders. Terrific piece of business. As I mentioned, we also have another signing, but this one's under the NHL. Jimmy Vesey, longtime veteran, is now heading to the Swiss League. We talked in the last day or two that he was weighing out some options that were outside the NHL, including a potential opportunity in Russia to play in the KHL. Obviously, he's opted against that and has signed with one of the teams in the Swiss League. So we'll see if he tries to make a return. I believe it was just a one-year contract for the time being. The Toronto Maple Leafs also announced a trio of signings, most of which they're all AHL deals. The only reason it's even notable is because it's Alex Nylander was the main player. William Nylander, of course, is his brother, and we know he signed in Toronto last year. He did get a chance to play with Willie at the NHL level, but things didn't really work out, that he was able to stick up there and kind of get more of a role. I mean, he was a highly drafted player, talented kid, but of course has not worked out anywhere near the level of his brother. But Alex Nylander, Brandon Baddock, and Luke Grange also get AHL contracts. The Marlies team as well, they have way too many veteran forwards, so I'm not sure what else they're going to do. It feels like to me like we might see some more changes or moves within their AHL club. Some news out of Seattle as well. The Seattle Kraken have hired Ryan Jankowski as their new assistant general manager. Of course, they've had an opening spot there for a while. Of course, we saw Ron Francis get promoted to from GM to president, and then Jason Botterill go from AGM to GM, creating a hole in their spot there for a new AGM, which is now Jankowski. Of course, he's worked with Jason Botterill before in Buffalo, spent 3 years working with him. So they are familiar with each other from that time. Before that, of course, he also spent time in a variety of roles. He's done a lot in his career. Worked with the Islanders for about 4 years as well. He worked with the Arizona/Utah franchise for a number of years as director of amateur scouting. Does have very much a scouting background and a pretty good track record as well from the time that he was with the Arizona/Utah franchise and with the Islanders, he was responsible for recommending a lot of very, very good picks, especially in the first or second round. So there is that history there that should bode well for Seattle. He also spent 4 years as well working with Hockey Canada in a variety of roles of lead scout and director of player personnel between the U18 program as well as the U20 World Junior Club as well. And of course, got his very first job with the WHL's Spokane Chiefs as a scout, which at the time was actually coached by Mike Babcock, where he was early in his career too. Of course, Ryan Jankowski, in case you didn't know, his dad, Lou, was a longtime pro scout at the NHL level with both St. Louis and Washington, and a 15-year run with the New York Rangers. Now, the Kraken also had an intriguing video out posted to their social media this afternoon as well. I'm not quite sure what it all means, but it's pretty good cinema if you ask me. Looking at the players that were in it for Brandon Montour and Vince Dunn. It kind of cuts the video off with a little bit of a cliffhanger, if you will. Like they're pulling something, they have like a treasure chest that comes out of the sea. They're opening it up and then cuts it off. So I don't know what that's going to mean. I'm going to suggest maybe do they have like a new third jersey or something coming? I don't know. I know I checked their website to see if there's any hints. There really wasn't much there besides the fact that they have some promos on tickets right now, but I can't see it being about tickets for them to put that kind of effort into that kind of video. But certainly, yeah, a couple of great videos on social media today, between the Islanders video around getting the Schaefer contract done, and then the Seattle Kraken cinema there with Montour and Dunn. I certainly recommend you check that out. Another signing as well in Anaheim. They finally confirmed the signing of Sam Colangelo, the 23-year-old RFA forward, gets a 2-year contract. Of course, there was rumor that he was getting signed a few days ago, and then it turned out not to be the case. Wasn't official or what have you, but it is now. It's a 2-year contract. The first year is a two-way deal. It's the first year is two-way, $850 at the NHL, $375 at the American Hockey League. Year 2 is a one-way contract. Colangelo came on at the end of last season, had a strong finish to the year. He had 10 goals on the season, but 9 of them came in the final 18 games. So certainly finished strong. Sometimes it's hard to put a lot of stock into that when that time of year when the team's not making the playoffs and the pressure's kind of off a little bit. You get players kind of auditioning. It can be a unique set of circumstances. So I wish him the best. I hope he can continue it. But it's hard to say for sure. That's a big indicator that he's going to take off this year. But he does have some talent, and I certainly hope for his sake that he can continue where he left off. As I mentioned as well, we also learned today that Matthew Tkachuk, a Stanley Cup champion, back-to-back now with the Florida Panthers, has been announced and confirmed to be the EA Sports cover athlete for the new NHL 26 video game. So, of course, Tkachuk, they posted he's the face of hockey, or I can't remember the exact wording of it now, but I kind of wondered if we might see an honoring of maybe Johnny Gaudreau or something like that. I mean, I know Tkachuk and the Panthers have completely embraced kind of being the villains of the NHL, so to speak, and taking on the bad guy type of role. So, I mean, like even when he posted as well about this, thanking everybody who supported him and those who didn't. Like, it's just the way he's made a point to go about his business since winning the cup for the second time. It's just they really, like I said, like he really enjoys kind of being the bad guy, if you will. But yeah, Tkachuk is I believe the second athlete to be on the cover of the game, hoisting the Stanley Cup. I know there's some people that think there is like a EA Sports cover curse as well. I don't know if I can really sign on to that theory or not, but I know that there are many out there who believe it, and we'll see if it has any effect on Matthew or not. Obviously, we learned yesterday from Elliot Friedman that he's very likely going to be missing significant time to start the NHL season. So that's the other part of this, and I know the plans for this probably were well underway a long time ago to determine who was going to be the cover athlete of the game for this year. But, it just seems interesting to me that they would select a player that's going to probably not play the first half of the year. I'm going to guess based on what we learned about his injuries, what Elliot had to say yesterday, it sounds like he might be out till at least Christmas, if not January, and then hopefully be back in time to play with Team USA for the Olympics, and then go into the Panthers lineup for the stretch run towards the playoffs. So we'll see. Now, as I mentioned as well, we have another update today as well on the Montreal Canadiens and Kirby Dach, and it's kind of gotten the Habs fan base in a bit of a frenzy here. I'm wondering now about, is it more imperative and necessary than we thought for the Montreal Canadiens and Ken Hughes and Jeff Gorton to go out and make a significant trade to bring in a number 2 center? Based on the fact that they've yet to do that, and the fact that Dach, of course, is still very much in their plans under contract and believed to be ready to go for next year, that he would probably get every opportunity to land that spot at a training camp and see if he can stick there, and that the answer might already be an internal piece that they have. So, maybe that's why they haven't made a trade. Maybe it's also that they just haven't found the right deal. Trades can be challenging at times. We've heard rumors and speculation about a number of candidates that they've supposedly at least kicked tires on or made inquiries with, had some degree of trade talk around. I know the Habs fan base seemed to be pretty fixated on Mason McTavish out of Anaheim, the fact that he remains an unsigned restricted free agent with the Ducks here. But, like I said, we don't really know with any kind of certainty that Anaheim has any desire to trade him. The big thing with McTavish is all the rumors have been on mainly about his side of things, saying that he's been a little bit frustrated with his role and whatnot, and that maybe he would like that. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we've seen comments. I think it was through an NHL or Sportsnet article with Luke Fox, and I believe McTavish said that he's hoping everything works out and he can remain with the Ducks long term. But again, you have to take all those quotes with a grain of salt, because when they're with a team, that they're not going to go out and badmouth them. They're never going to say they want out publicly. It's it's rare, right? So you have to remember, like, they're just not going to do that. So at the end of the day here, the reports, though, on Dach are concerning. Of course, like any report, it has a speculative part and rumor to it, so we can't say 100% that this is fact. But if it is, then there's reason to be concerned. There's no doubt about that. Kirby Dach, of course, as we know, 24 years old, former number 3 overall pick, from the Chicago Blackhawks, who Montreal, of course, made a big trade for at the draft a few years ago. Trading, of course, Romanov to the New York Islanders to get a first-round pick. Then that first-round pick went to Chicago to land Dach. Dach comes over. He had some injuries during his young time with Chicago as well. The Blackhawks gave up on a player that was drafted very highly, very quickly. And, a lot of us wondered, well, why, especially when they were rebuilding, it just didn't make sense at the time. Why are they giving up on this player so early? And I just wonder if they either lost faith in his abilities, or maybe they just lost faith in his ability to stay healthy earlier. Maybe they saw some warning signs that a lot of other people didn't really see and decided to cash out early and move on. Whatever the reasons were, I think they're probably sitting back going, you know what, right now we're happy we did that, because if we were relying on him to be a big piece of our team and he was constantly hurt and missing significant time, that would be frustrating. Whereas, Montreal's dealing with that now instead. So clearly the report from Maxim Truman says that basically Kirby Dach is still not recovered from knee surgery, that he's still in rehab mode. We do know that he had surgery back in February for his knee. At completion of the surgery, the Montreal Canadiens did announce that he would be 100% ready to go for training camp for the upcoming 25-26 season. Now, if you take a look at the recovery time from this type of surgery, especially where he's had multiple knee injuries before, it's usually a good 6 months. Sometimes it can be longer. Now, February, you got March, April, May, June, July, August. So that puts us at 6 months. But if he's at a point at the 6 month mark where he's not really skating regularly, that's concerning. Could he not play a pro hockey game? That's a completely different issue. But with where he's at, it seems concerning. So the rest of the report here says there was a lot of talk and people wondering, where was Dach this summer? Because a lot of Montreal younger players, especially, looking at Suzuki, Caulfield, Demidov, Laine, I think at times Hudson, a few others, were all kind of gathered together, spending a lot of time training and skating together in the Montreal area. So, obviously Dach being a young player who was recovering and rehabbing, a lot of people wondering, well, why is he not there? That was a big question that's been, unanswered up until right now. So like I said, obviously they only seen him skate in Brossard once after the end of the season. Apparently at the time, the report says he wasn't even going full speed and was still clearly very much rehabbing. So some time has obviously gone by since then. And we've learned through this report, Maxim Truman says that he's learned that Dach has been spending the summer in Alberta, of course, which is where he's from. Where he spends his summer in Caden are not all that far apart. So apparently they've been spending a lot of time together and doing some training and all that kind of stuff, like the other Habs guys were doing in the Montreal area, or at least in the gym at the very least. I'm not sure what they've been doing for on-ice stuff. It doesn't really indicate that. But it says that basically Dach's been spending a lot of time in Alberta, kind of hanging out with Caden Gooley. Okay, so that's all fine. But of course, we know Nick Suzuki just got married. Supposedly, I believe there's confirmation that he was there. He came in for the wedding, but he did not skate with the team because there was a lot of skates taking place before and after the wedding. And he wasn't on the ice. So people are wondering, is that because he is not anywhere near that level of to compete, and he doesn't want to draw the attention to himself, he's kind of trying to fly low under the radar here? Like, what is it? And then there's also this Truman report says that he has sources that say they spotted him working out in Edmonton at a gym doing squats with weights that he referred to as that he could get at a Econo gym or something. So basically not anything what you would expect to see out of an NHL player, kind of, obviously poking fun at how much weight he was using. So that's concerning as well. And it explains why maybe that he's kind of flying under the radar and not hanging out a lot with the other team in the Montreal area, because he's just not wanting to draw attention to himself, and his rehab's not as far along as everybody had hoped for. So obviously, for a guy like Dach to be this far past surgery and to be 40 days ahead of training camp, and to not really be where he's at with his recovery does seem concerning. Now, like I said, if you look at orthopedic surgeons and you ask around if you know anybody that actually has real knowledge, they'll say 6 months is probably, especially for a guy like Dach who's had multiple injuries, is probably a minimum. And in reality, it's going to take a little bit longer. But, we're at 6 months now, right? And he still has, all of August and a good chunk of September before camp starts. So that's like I said, 40 days or so is a good amount of time. But if he's not even close to that, it just really makes you worry that he's not going to be ready to start the season. And if they haven't made a trade for a number 2 center, and if Dach's not ready, then who's going to play that role? It kind of leaves you with a guy like maybe Newhook, and then you've got like Jake Evans is going to be lower in the lineup. Like, I don't know. It could really have a major impact on the start of their season. And like we all have said before, you can't win the Stanley Cup in October, November, but you can lose it. And if you get off to a slow start, it can be really tough to recover from. Now, I'm not saying that one player is going to make or break that team. Even if Dach is there, who's to say that he's going to be lighting it up? We don't know, right? You like to see this guy be having every opportunity to succeed. You like to see this guy have every chance to play and stay healthy for a change. But at the same time, like, this does seem concerning. But like I said, obviously this guy has sources. He claims it to be reliable, but until we get to see firsthand, it's obviously speculation. But do you think that these reports are concerning for Montreal and Dach? And is this going to accelerate the idea that closer to training camp, are we more likely to see a trade? Like I said, I know that they've looked at Mason McTavish. We've heard maybe to some degree Marco Rossi. He's out there as well. But there's really a lot of other players have been kind of somewhat spoken for. There's lots of guys that could be available for trade, though. But who do they talk to is the big question, right? We've heard a number of names throughout the course of the offseason. I don't think there's much to the Nazem Kadri speculation. I don't know that they really have a great chance to land McTavish. I know a lot of teams would love to have this guy. I don't blame them, but it's not easy to pull off by any means. So that's going to be tough to do. So where do they turn? Let me know what your thoughts are on this Dach situation. Is this really concerning? Is it going to force them to make a trade to make sure that they're not going to have a slow start to the season? Just let me know what you think on these reports as well as all the other news that we discussed here today, and we'll discuss further down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.